Drop kick me, Jesus, through the goalposts of life. End over end, neither left nor to right. Straight through the heart of them righteous uprights. Drop kick me, Jesus, through the goalposts of life.
Welcome back to Doug Pagitt Radio. My favorite bumper that we play around here. Bumper, if you don't know the business talk, the little music that we play before and after the segments. We refer to that in the biz as bumper music. I like that one. That was the only religious song I knew growing up. A little Bobby Bear, Drop Kick Me Jesus, and it sort of reminds me that we're all introduced to a notion of religion, spirituality, Christianity, and then we respond, and then we react, and then we decide yes or no, or it fits us, or we want to nuance it this way or that way. And that seems to me to be a good part of the human endeavor, is that we're able to respond and not simply take, that we're not just vessels. We have to take it as it is. But we are also people who are invited to respond and to fight back and talk back and cheer back if we need to, and say amens and no way if the ideas that are being presented to us strike us that way. And that's what I like about the kinds of guests that we're able to have on here, including Bruce Epperly, who is the author of a book, Process Theology, a guide for the perplexed. Bruce, I wanted to ask you that question about how you see this as part of the Christian tradition and a true expression of what the story of Christianity has been from beginning to end. But tell us a little bit about the book. What will we see if people are smart enough to go over to the to either your website or to the fan page on Facebook for Doug Pagitt Radio and click on the book link and buy it? What are they going to find in that book, Process Theology, a guide for the perplexed?
Well, one of my goals as a writer, as a person who studies theology, as a pastor, is to make complex ideas accessible to lay people. Mm-hmm. And the book is intended to help people understand process theology as a lived theology. So I reflect on things like religion and science, how you deal with suffering, healing and wholeness, and I embrace or reflect on this in relationship to people's lived experience. I think good theology or good stories about God present a vision, a landscape of the world. This is what the world looks like. They tell us we can experience the world, so they give us a promise, and then they give us practices. And I believe that that process theology is one of many very good theologies that provide a vision of the world which is adventurous, which encourages responsibility, which enables us to have a personal relationship with Jesus. So I have a focus on things like science, the human adventure, where we fit in the universe, problem of evil, survival after death. And no theologian can explain everything. After all, I was corrected recently. Somebody said I made a comment, there's at least 100 billion galaxies in the universe. He said, no, they found 125 billion. Another way of putting it is it's infinite.
It's just beyond counting. You know, one of our listeners pulls a quote from your website that she thought was beautiful. I think you're now new to her, but she found this on your website and sent it to me over on the video page. And you write this: God is the circle whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere.
Believe it or not, that's the title of my newest book coming up in a month or two on Celtic spirituality.
I'm telling you, this guy's writing books while we're talking right now. I'm sure he's going to transcribe this and he's going to sell it to us a couple of months from now. I love it. Because, see, not enough people are producing these kinds of conversation points for people. That's the name of your new book, God is the Circle whose center is everywhere?
Let's see, the center is everywhere.
The center is everywhere. I like
center
it.
Is everywhere. And for me, that really speaks to it. That's a phrase that has been attributed to both Christian and non-Christian philosophers and theologians. And what it means to me is that God's center is where you are. That omnipresence, a grand old theological term, really means that wherever we are, we're in companionship with God. But if we think we're the only center, there's deep trouble. The circumference is nowhere, so everyone else is in the center.
So, and by the circumference being nowhere, this idea is that there's no boundary at which someone's outside of and someone else is on the inside of.
It embraces us all, and so even the people we don't like, and the people that we struggle with ideologically, or even in terms of our issues of politics, even on Memorial Day when we remember, and I'm from a military family. My father was in World War II.
Me too.
Even when we remember on Memorial Day those who fought for our country against other countries, and we need to give them great care and thanksgiving for their sacrifices, they too, our opponents, were also God's children.
Yeah. Well, here's the question I posed to you before the break. So people might be listening and being like, you know what, I like hearing you say that, because that's tapping into what I've thought all along, or those are fresh ideas. There's a beauty to that. People who would get that, then many would say, but look, that just isn't Christianity, right? Like, that isn't Judaism. Like, the story is God is ordaining the world. God predestines the world. God has a plan and is running that plan. And you can either live in agreement with that plan or not. And if you're not, God's going to roll over you, because God's doing what God's doing. And he's not going to be shaken by people's half-minded and half-informed pleadings and desires. So I like what you're saying, Bruce, but that Christianity says something totally different.
Well, I beg to differ, and of course there's a variety of Christian perspectives, and I honor that viewpoint, by the way, but I'll present mine as a contrasting one that I'm willing to live and die for, that, are you going to define God in terms of love or coercion? Now, love can be a little challenging. Again, the possibilities that God may be giving us and may not always be good ones. We may have to go to rehab.
Right.
We may have to let go of our excuses. Think of Moses and that dialogue between God and Moses. It's not clear that God's in control of the situation. Moses is walking by that burning bush day after day, and finally he notices it.
Nice.
And then he tries to find every reason under the sun to get out of his vocation, and God keeps coming back at him with possibilities. What if, I think when you buy into the notion that God determines everything, you're buying into the notion that Katrina was God's will.
Yeah, right.
That the Haitian earthquake, that God centered that tornado on Joplin, that God gives a young parent cancer, that there was a commercial on HIV/AIDS on your program, and that God gives people AIDS, and that God is probably unworthy of our worship. I think Jesus Christ gives us our best picture of God, and God comes that you might have abundant life. What is it about abundant life? What is it about a God who destroys half a town that implies abundant life? What is it about a God who sends a tidal wave that implies abundant life? I think that both images can be found in the Bible, and of course the Bible is a library of possibilities. But if I'm going to line up with the God I can believe in, and it's not all about me, by the way, I'm not God, and I'm humble of the fact that in the 125 billion galaxy universe, we can be wrong about most everything. But the God that comes to me, that allows me to keep fighting for justice, to seek to fight for the well-being of this planet, that gives me hope that we can make it through another few generations and even into perpetuity as a race that's doing good things, is one that urges me on, that pushes me and gives me just enough freedom in each moment of my life to say yes.
Well, Bruce, and that's what I like about this, is that you're willing to say, look, here's why I think this is the way it is. This is the argument that I want to make. And then there's a humility in acknowledging, and I think people from the other side of these ideas and with different perspectives, some of them do the same. They say, look, this is the story that I think really tells what God has been up to and will be up to all along. And so this is the story I want to be in on, and maybe I'm wrong. Right? That could be. We could
God's
be wrong about this. Yeah, I'm sure even if we're right, we're not right in totality, right? We're only right in part. But I do think it matters when someone says, there's another story that you could live. There's another version that you could know. And I'm not one who thinks that it works to coerce people into having new ways of viewing the world, right? It's just very temporary and doesn't work for very long. But I do think it's important for people to know that there's more ideas available to them that narrate the story of the Christian faith than just the ones that they've heard.
I think, isn't that the truth? And we need to let 1,000 flowers bloom, because they've always bloomed. If you look at the difference between the Calvinists and the Wesleyans, between John and Mark in the Gospels.
Yeah, Bible writers.
We all left had diversity from the very beginning of Christian faith.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to honor it as more of a contrast. I mean, we need a God with enough power to keep this old universe going and enough love to keep forgiving us and then giving us second and third and 20 chances. You know, I think God lures us more by love and faithfulness than by coercion.
I like it. Bruce, I don't always ask, I don't ask every guest to do this, but in the last couple minutes we have, could you, and I'm willing to ask you this because we're friends, could you tell us what you think the critique of your view or process theology as a whole, what critiques you hear that make you say, boy, you might be on to something? Is there a set that comes to your mind that you can say, you know, when people raise that one, it does make me have to keep pursuing how I'm thinking about these things?
I think the major ones that come to me are, and I've tried to adapt to them actually, is that is the whole question of power. What's enough power? And here I'm talking more from theological friends, people who might follow folks like Wolfhart Pannenberg or Karl Barth. They may be mysteries to your readers or to your listeners, but they're people who are theological friends on the moderate to progressive end of Christianity and who do have a sense that there's an omega point, that there's in toward which everything's going.
Yes,
And in many ways, I would say that, you know, God keeps coming back, and you don't want to exactly compare God to a Timex watch, but, you know, God keeps on ticking. God's likely to outlast any of God's opponents. And God's outlasting them, and if you say again that at the end of the day,
smart money's on God if there is one.
Smart money is on the one who's not going away, and the one who's not going to quit loving you. And that's, I think, the issue. And even we can say no to God constantly, and God will keep coming back to us and not give up. And whether in this life or beyond the grave, God's going to keep going after us and saying, this is where you're called to go. This is my vision, and work it out, but this is the direction you're supposed to go.
Fantastic. That's Bruce Epperly. You can find him around the internet if you need a link to his book. It's on the Doug Pagitt Radio site. And as many of you also know, we do record these conversations, both an audio and video version. You can find him at DougPagittRadio.com. You can find him on YouTube as well. And so if you wanted to pass this conversation around to others that you know would like to be in on it, you can find it at the Doug Pagitt Radio website. You can find it at the Facebook page and on YouTube. You can find it. Share the story. Bruce, thanks for the book. Thanks for being willing to be on Doug Pagitt Radio.
Well, thank you.
And when the new book comes out, will you come back and talk with us again?
I'd love to be back.
Fantastic. Hey, we're going to be back here with the Right On. You know, we give a Right On out every week to people who we think are changing the world and making it the way that it's supposed to be. And you might now start to piece together some of the theological reasons why we have a Cripes, come on, you got to be kidding me, and a Right On in our radio program, because we know that we live in a world where we have choices to make. And we have a calling in our lives to be people who don't just take it as it is, but make the world as we want it to be. So we'll be back here with the Right On that might go out to a surprising person for some of you. And we'll be back here after the break. Doug Pagitt Radio, religious radio that's not quite right, on AM 950.